You guys are ready to go? Okay. So welcome everyone, both here live as well as cyberspace. And now that all these classes can be archived, so I say hello to all the generations to come, whoever will watch this. This can go down into the ages. Amazing what technology is about. Which leads me to the topic at hand, and that is one of the big ironies of our time, that as mobile technology accelerates, what's happening with our so-called inner lives? Is it also accelerating? Are we more mobile, more moving on a deeper spiritual, emotional, psychological level? And you find this amazing paradox, actually disturbing paradox, I should say, and that is that the more powerful our technologies are, I would not say that commensurate to that, I would think in disproportion to that, we're actually becoming more lethargic, which of course begs the question, why would that be the case? You know, the concept of a couch potato was created in the modern age. Our grandparents who toiled in the fields and had to work 8, 10, 12 hours a day just to get a sack, a bushel of potatoes home, didn't have time to sit around on the couch and languish and lounge and enjoy themselves. So as technology has advanced our capacity to literally be in one place, anywhere, you can access any information, anytime, has in turn not necessarily created more evolved and more refined and more sophisticated relationships. As a matter of fact, you could even argue that the family structure, the home, the fidelity, integrity has not necessarily benefited from this technology. If anything, maybe the opposite, which is a topic I want to address. And that is basically inertia, spiritual inertia in a age of mobility. That's the topic at hand. That's the more sophisticated title. Another title we gave for it was more tired, lazy, fat, or whatever, how to get off the couch. That's a more, contemporary title that you see on social media. But regardless, the topic affects us all because every one of us would love to be, have better relationships, have better psychological and emotional lives, one that's more functional, more giving, more loving, more nurturing. So I think it's an excellent springboard and comparative study to understand what is going on. I mean, people that chalk up and they have millions of frequent flyer miles and have traveled everywhere in the world. And yet, if you ask them and if you look into their psychological, personal lives, you don't find much movement. They haven't changed. People still following their routines, bad habits, whether it's narcissism, whether it's selfishness. So the disparity today is far deeper because of the advancements. And frankly, a lot of people do think that since we live in such a technologically advanced age, that means we're advanced human beings, because look what we've accomplished. But it's actually a little arrogant to make that statement, even though, yes, science and medicine and all the different technologies that exist have definitely, in a very tangible way, improved life. Life expectancy has almost doubled from a century ago. And other advancements that we see have improved life. But it can create an illusion that we're better people as a result. And we should never think just because we can build better machines, that makes us better people. It could make us better people, but it doesn't necessarily the case. Because technology, like science itself, is neutral. They still say junk in, junk out. Yes, a computer crunches numbers and makes things faster and easier to access. But if you put junk in, you're just going to have faster junk results. If you put good things in, you have the accelerated goodness, so to speak. So it doesn't change the morality and the integrity and the health of a human being. And that's critical to understand. So just because you have better machines and you have more equipment, you have more utensils and tools, does not make you a better person. If you're a good person, these tools can help advance the virtue of your life. But if not, it can also create a distortion and actually create more destructive elements. Look at I don't like to bring up this example, but it's just an example that you cannot ignore. In the last century, one of the most advanced societies on earth, not a third world country, not what we Westerners arrogantly like to call primitive, tribal or primal nation, one of the most advanced nations in the world, maybe consider itself the most advanced in science, philosophy, literature, and I'm talking about Germany. What did they stoop to become? More destructive and more creative ways than anyone before them. Turn mass murder into a science. And doctors who took an oath of protecting life ended up experimenting on life in the most obscene fashion. So we have a living example of what can happen when you convince yourself that you're God. Just because you have better tools does not make you a better person. And on the contrary, the better tools, if you look and study it is so blood curdling how they experiment, how to kill more people within an hour with the least amount of anguish to those that were killing, and until they discovered Zyklon B gas, that was the most efficient way to kill as many people as possible. So they use science, they use technology, use chemicals, use modern warfare to mass murder, and Jews, of course, were the brunt of it all, but mass murder in ways that are unprecedented. I mean, if you're reading the numbers, if you ever read the book, The War Against the Jews from Lucy Davidowitz, she documents the numbers of how many people were killed on a daily basis. And it was all efficient, it was all documented. The Germans are excellent engineers and excellent clerks, and they had everything numbered and so on. So you see as I said, the naked efficiency, which was, of course, the most sadistic thing to see, of how they use science in the worst possible way. So no one should ever think that science and technology makes better people. It's a neutral. It's not bad, it's not good. It's like anything in life. It's neutral. It can improve the world, and it can destroy the world. And I think it's important to understand that in our context. The reason I was hesitating to bring, because I'm not trying to suggest that technology today is being used like the Nazis did it. I'm just pointing out that technology has nothing to do with morality. It's neutral. So in that context, so when we talk about our lives today, and we have every gadget. I just got myself an iOS 6. How do you like that? And I'm from the laggards. I don't get it as fast as everybody because my other phone simply broke. I have a BlackBerry and so on. So I actually grew up with technology in the sense, to me, it's not a big. I'm not seduced by its wizardry, because I remember using a typewriter. Before that, using a pen. So I remember a typewriter, a good old typewriter. Any of you remember a typewriter? Okay. You don't look the age that you'd remember what a typewriter looks like. But a typewriter. And then I remember the first word processors in 1982 and 83. And then I remember the first fax machine. And then as things progressed, there was the BBS that was preceded the web. Then came the web and email and everything we know today. And we're still in the infancy of technology. Technology, they say today, is more or less where the automobile was in 1920. We're 20 years into the internet. It's not such a long time. I know when you're living in it, you think that, wow, look at these advancements. But in a decade from now, we'll look back at these phones. You ever look back at our cell phones of 15 years ago? They look like alien creatures, right? Monstrosities, big, But so technology is something, as Jeff Bezos, when he was being criticized when he came out with the Kindle, the ebook Kindle, so he was said this is the downfall of civilization. So he made a very important observation. He said, technology is anything that was created after you were born. That's all it is. Once upon a time, the printing press was the downfall of civilization. And before that, Socrates famously said that the tablet, the fact that they wrote things down, they etched things in a tablet, was the downfall of civilization, because people won't be memorizing anymore. So everyone called it the downfall of civilization. A book is not here with us from the beginning of history. Books are only here 500 years, 600 years. The printing press. So, and it's a very important observation. It's true. It may not be our comfort zone. We may be used to using an older technology, but a telephone today, 100 years ago, was barely existed. And the same thing with an airplane and an automobile and a television and radio and so on, and electricity. So technology I look at it this way. I see it as a tool, a better tool. But, many of us do get seduced by its power and the ability to look at this phone and this and this and that and that. Some people love to sit up nights reading operators' manuals. I don't know if you're that type, read all the fine print. And I understand it's exciting always to bring something new home that has all kinds of the gadgets and has all kinds of games and has everything that you need, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, all it is an instrument. It's a tool. And this tool is simply there for us to use. And never think that it replaces the work necessary to be a better person. That will never be replaced by technology. To be a better person, a better husband, a better wife, better parent, better friend, a more kind person, a kinder person, a gentler person, that is nothing to do with technology. If you have technology, your gentleness and your kindness can be shared with many people. You can communicate with someone you love, even if they're not near you. You have a lot of capacity what once didn't exist. Once upon a time, someone you loved traveled, you probably couldn't communicate with them until they got back. Or you sent them a letter, you didn't even know if it got there, depending if the camel arrived or didn't arrive, or the donkey, however they used to deliver the mail in ancient times. But that's, I think, a critical component before even getting into the subject matter. On the other hand, everything in existence is there as a lesson for us. The Baal Shem Tov has a very powerful statement. He says, everything you see and hear has a lesson in our lives, to improve our lives. So when you look at technology, you look at mobility, if you think about it purely on a conceptual level, it is a tremendous lessons in life. It teaches us the ability to transcend time and space. It teaches us powers of unity that were never seen before. The universe, which essentially the march of science, the march of progress, scientific march of progress is essentially, if you want to sum it up, the search for unity, or some call it the search for the unified field theory. The unity that once upon a time, and even today in some ways, we lived in a fragmented world, and we didn't have laws and axioms and formulas and equations that connected different phenomena. Science essentially discovers the forces that shape all of existence, the DNA, the subatomic structures. And once you recognize those forces, there's a certain thread that connects the entire universe in one symbiotic harmony. So when you look at it on the surface level, the world is made up of trillions and trillions of organisms and cells and so on. And on the surface level, you may think they have no connection between each other. What do we learn when we study science and technology? You learn there's an underlying connection. Just like when you watch these nature shows, fascinating, and see how everything works together, the coordination. Look at your own human body. In the book of Job, he says, "For my flesh I behold God." Your flesh, your physical body, is actually the best example of something where you see 75 trillion cells, thousands and thousands of systems, billions of other organisms, all working together in a healthy human being, in one miraculous harmony and symmetry. And if you think about it, how is that possible? Who's the captain of the ship? Who's telling your legs when they walk they shouldn't slip on each other on a very basic level? That when you take food in your mouth, the process begins, the digestive process. When you breathe air, a different process is generated. How is that working exactly? So we take it for granted because when it works, it works. God forbid, when it doesn't work, that's when we begin to start looking around and saying how many, what you suddenly see someone struggling to breathe in a hospital, then you say, wow, 1 second, breathing shouldn't be taken for granted. When you start seeing the wonder of a newborn being born, a child, you realize the miracle here. But we have to pause and recognize it. So science and technology, in a way, helps us understand the awesome magnificence and grandeur and elegance of nature, of ourselves, and of our connections. So with all I've said before, I said science is neutral and anyone should never think that it is a guarantee for a better world or a better person. But on the other hand, it has tremendous lessons for us that when we learn them, humble lessons, we actually can learn to become healthier and better human beings. So let's talk about this mobility thing, because there's a lot of aspects of science. I mentioned just a few. The unity. Let's talk about mobility. So today, mobile. That's it. Everything is mobile. Everything is moving to the mobile phone. In your hand, your handheld smart device, you can access everything. And as technology improves, speeds will improve, downloads and uploading will improve. You'll be able to literally, without any pause, be able to access any piece of information wherever it may be in existence. Anytime, anywhere, everything. It's an amazing thing. And that creates a mobility, which means that you don't have to be at a particular location to access it. You can sit in your room, press a button, and within a day, if not overnight, get something delivered to your house. You can access, you don't need to go to a library to do research. You don't need to even go to a television to watch a game. It's all there in your hand. Communication, of course, texting, social media, connecting, news, everything. They say now that the news media is going through a new revolution, and it just really began in the last few months. If you recall, what the cable TV did to regular network television was really, when was it? It was during the Gulf War, when it was obvious that cable TV was trumping the regular networks because of its access and so on. So now, in the last few months, with events that happened, for example, the attacks in Nice, and positive events as well, the news broke everywhere on Facebook and on the social media. People began to communicate it there, and the networks and cable TV were broadcasting Facebook messages and Facebook posts. So it's clear, and it's becoming obvious that slowly the news will be delivered to us no longer. You don't even have to wait. You don't even have to get to a television. You don't need cable. You don't need anything. It'll be all in your hand. And this will all be accelerating and accelerating. So what it teaches us, on a positive note, it teaches us the power of being able to transcend time and space. And I'll use examples for it from Kabbalistic and mystical teaching, where it talks about this idea, that the world is made up of time and space. Time and space, by definition, creates structure and everything in its time. Today is Wednesday, tomorrow's Thursday, Friday. Space is the same idea. You occupy a particular space, and you can't occupy another space. You're here, you can't be in Australia simultaneously. You can't be in other places. Comes technology, and suddenly you can be in one place and experience things that are happening millions of miles away. You could be one moment and experience something from different times. Not the future yet, but from the past. Or things that would take time to travel. Now it's instantaneous. So this teaches us that there are things that transcend time and space. As the mystics put it, divine God himself does not occupy time and space. If you want to use, in other words, the soul, truth. Where does truth reside? The truth doesn't have a geographical location. If something is true, it's true throughout, from the beginning through the middle to the end. If you know, the Hebrew word for truth is emes. Emes in Hebrew is made up of aleph, mem, tuf. The Hebrew alphabet is 22 letters. Aleph is the first letter, the tuf is the last letter, and the mem is the 11th letter. So the word emes is comprised of these three letters, because what is truth? Truth means it's true from the beginning, through the middle, through the end. This is essentially what technology teaches us, that you can transcend, there's certain things that transcend time and space. So truths do that, the soul does that. As I mentioned before, you could have two people who love each other dearly, but they may be a million miles apart, but they're right near each other. You can be sitting there someone physically, and you despise that person. So physical proximity does not yet define necessarily closeness. These are things that technology teaches us. Now, the element of mobility. Mobility means that you don't have to be stuck anywhere. You constantly have access. You don't even have to travel to find this information. And yet we have, as I said before, the contrast. Because of this ease and comfort and access, what it has created is given us a lot of free time, and has created this the stereotype, the image of a couch potato, of someone that can just sit and not move and not do anything. You look around. I'm talking now the downside. You see people texting, people watching. You walk down the street. I do this almost all the time. I count how many people are looking at their phones. It's almost 8 out of 10 in any given scenario. On subways, maybe because they don't have wireless or whatever it may be. But almost anywhere, 8 out of 10. I was driving here, and literally people cross streets and they're on their phone. That's has become our addiction. Now, you could say, fine, this is giving me access to everything. Why shouldn't I have that access? However, the question then is, what does it do to relationships? When's the last time we had like a quality conversation with someone, face-to-face conversation, that without distractions? Go to a business meeting, an office meeting, and what happens? You can sit there and everybody's sitting with their phones. So they don't even have their full attention. But it's not considered rude because everyone's doing it. Not that rudeness suddenly, just because everybody's being rude doesn't mean rudeness isn't rudeness. It just means it's become common. And it always bothers me. It always bothers me. And I've been guilty, but I catch myself pretty quickly. I never allow at a meeting or anything myself to look at a phone. And that's that. I just don't do that. I feel it's not respectful. And I always share the story. I was sitting in a car with a friend. We hadn't seen each other for a while. And we were both going, there was someone else driving us, and he's texting. I'm trying to have a conversation with him. Can't get his attention. So finally I decide to text him. So I text him, and he looks at the text, and I see he's right away disconcerted, what's going on here? He realizes something. He says to me, "Are you texting me?" I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Why are you texting me? You're sitting right near me." I said, "Because I can't get your damn attention." And I still couldn't even after that. So what does that say? I always talk about children. Children are always the best litmus test of health. What benefit do children have from our technologies? The only benefit they have is that's a great babysitter. You want to get your children out of your hair. You sit them down with a mobile phone or with a game or with a video thing, and that's that. But in relationships, you think texting your 2-year-old is going to really create nurturing? And I see my grandchildren now, and they're very adept at these phones, even better than we adults. And I look at it and I say, but you know what? What are they being deprived of? What about that? The love you need, the nurturing. You want to be held. And then you look at the animal kingdom and nature, and you see how parents nurture their children without any technologies. So you come to realize that there's a certain basic principle, basic common truths that technology simply does not replace, and that is, I rue the day that people will replace their replace personal nurturing with machines. That this is not a joke. This happens to be a true story, where a mother comes to the school. The teacher at school realizes that the young boy is very clingy and very needy, and she realized that she has to do something about it to get the mother, to show a little more love to this child. So the teacher decides, you know what, let me call it for a meeting. I'll speak to her heart to heart, without criticism, without judgment, and just share with her what I see that her little son needs some more nurturing. Okay, so she sits, she prepares herself to do it sensitively, make sure that the woman won't feel attacked, won't feel criticized. And so be it. What happens is they sit down, and she tells the mother, your little boy is very clingy lately and very needy. Maybe an extra few hugs and kisses, a little more attention at home can serve him well. So the mother says, I'm so glad you're saying that, because we were yesterday by the psychologist, and he told us the same thing. And I told my nanny, can you give him a little more hugs and kisses? So she immediately blamed the nanny for it and just got the nanny to do it. The teacher realized, obviously, there's no one to talk to. This is the world in which we live. The most powerful thing that we can do, the single most powerful thing, even though I don't like to simplify things, and generalities are never usually healthy, but nevertheless, I will go on the limb in saying the single most powerful thing a human being can do for the human race is to nurture their child, is to show love. There's nothing more powerful, because that is generational. It's not a one-time thing. You're not just doing someone a favor. You're watering a flower forever. And God forbid, when it's deprived of that, the child, it is the single most damaging thing, because that child will look for that nurturing, for that validation somewhere, will look for love. And most problems can be traced to this issue. Now, no parent wants to hear this, because I'm not trying to blame anybody. None of us are perfect, but we have to understand that there's nothing greater that you can do. You can make billions of dollars and leave your children millions of dollars in portfolios. If you don't give them this, what I just said, the nurturing and love, that validation, reinforcement, support that builds their internal self-esteem, nothing can replace that. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. That doesn't mean that someone's been deprived of that is lost and doomed, but it means that they're going to have to work uphill to gain and regain and reclaim the love that they deserve. So as I said, I don't hesitate saying this. I see it, the older I get, the more I see it, the more obvious it is to me. So then going back to this technology thing, what happens is when the person doesn't have that, so technology is a great distraction. I'm busy on my phone. I'm busy with my email, busy with this. And it could be all good things. It could be for work. It could be for personal entertainment, stimulation. I'm not denying that. But if that replaces the human relationship, what does that say? Which child in the world, which person who wants love in the world is going to accept an excuse? I was busy texting somebody because I had to do that. These are short-term benefits. They're not even long-term. This is forever. So the fact that technology can create that we should become something that less human and less sensitive is a tragedy, actually. It's not a tragedy on the scale where someone will say, wow, this is like a Holocaust. But it's a tragedy on an internal level because it creates a deterioration of the soul. And we must know that. And again, it's not the technology, it's our dependence on it and replacing the human side of things. So technology has both qualities, has both elements, has things we can learn from and things that can also destroy us. Simple as that. It can be an addiction like any other addiction. It may not be drugs and alcohol where it has maybe the same type of physical addiction, but it's an addiction nevertheless. We all know what addiction is. Addiction means you can't live without it. Try depriving someone from their smartphone for too long, and you see that they're having withdrawal symptoms, you know what's going on. So how do we understand this? If it's a tool that helps us access more, helps us transcend time and space, how could it have such a detrimental effect on us? The answer is because it all begins with us before we have the machine. Like I said before, the instruments are only as good as the person using that instrument. So let's talk about that, the mobility and the immobility of our lives. I mentioned couch potato. So I always use that statistic from Adam Rickover, the admiral, the 4-star admiral in the U.S. Navy. He's called the father of the nuclear navy. So in 1955, he gave a very important talk, and that talk was that in the last 100 years, from 1855 to 1955, here's an unbelievable statistic. In 1855, 95% of energy generated in the world was generated through human labor. In 1955, 95% of energy, or a little different number, but close to that number, is generated by machines. Okay, what does that tell you? It tells you a few things. First of all, it tells you the tremendous progress. That instead of now, as I mentioned before, sitting 7-8 hours in a field, toiling, to earn your keep, to earn the amount of food you may need and then maybe trade or sell the rest of the surplus, now all you got to do is press a button. Or someone else presses a button and you just pay them and they give you the food. That's a tremendous amount of progress. That means all those hours, what happened to all those hours? You can use it now for all kinds of beautiful things. It also generated a tremendous amount of wealth because of that. But here's the downside. What happens if you have now suddenly you're freed and you don't need to work anymore 8 hours in the toil in the field? What are you doing with these hours? So there was the birth of leisure was born. A lot of leisure, a lot of free time. Now what happens with free time? Free time for someone who's a scholar, who's a spiritual person, who's a person who's focused on making the world a better place, on serving others. Free time gives you more free time to be a better person. But let's say somebody does not focus on that. What happens with the free time? More free time to think about yourself and your needs. So I think a narcissism and a selfishness and a greed settled in the last 150 years that never existed before. Not because people were not capable of being that way, but people didn't have time to be that way. You simply didn't have the time, and today we have the time. We have the time to sit and dwell think about ourselves all day. Now, you tell me, is that a good thing or a bad thing? On a surface level, ostensibly, people would say, what's wrong with that? That's good. You could think about yourself, improve yourself, and grow. Yeah, that's if you turn it into growing and improving yourself. But think about yourself could also mean thinking how much you don't have compared to others. Think about myself, what me, and my ego and my needs, my desires. It could also bring us down to the lowest common denominator of our base desires and our base the lusts and interests. A lot of free time for a person that's not focused does not necessarily bode well. Because what happens with that free time? They get bored. You get bored, you start looking for something to excite you. Now, if you have quality stuff to excite you and stimulate you, great. What happens if you don't have? So you turn to things that are the lowest common denominator, including sexual, including other things. It's not a surprise that, there was always the concept, there was always, there was always some form of psychedelic experiences. But the amount of drugs being used today and the amount of alcohol being used today is unprecedented. Not only because it could be manufactured in mass, but because people have a lot of time. And they have a lot of time, and these substances happen to numb our senses and happen to get rid of the pain and anxieties of existential loneliness. And when you have a lot of time, you need something to fill that time. And boredom creates a vacuum, which is easily filled by the lowest common denominator of stuff. So now that we don't even have to travel anywhere to buy something. You have a mobile phone. How much more time has been freed up since 1955 until 2016? In the last 50 years. 60 years. And time is getting freed more and more and more. That's a fact. Now, some people fill that time with the pursuit of making money. You could say, okay, that's at least something productive. Yes or no? It may be more productive than filling the time with doing nothing, but is it really more productive? Making money, is money an end in itself? Like, if making money was bringing happiness, bringing purpose, bringing meaning, yeah, but it's not. It's just not maybe a destructive force as the other addictions I mentioned, but it's yet another empty objective that does not have any purpose of its own unless you do something good with the money. So making money has become an end in itself and a drive. I mean, the economy, people see finance and economy, especially when you read the books on capitalism, that money makes the world go around. Does it? Doesn't love make the world go around? Doesn't truth make the world go around? Doesn't spirit make the world go around? Because money is equated with power, and power, people think, once I have power, I can do whatever I want. But since when, just like technology does not make us better people, I'd like someone to show that money has made us better people. There's more money today in individual people's lives than ever before. Are we better people than ever before? No one even makes such a claim. I remember once a sociologist came to this class, and I asked him a loaded question. I said to him, well, it wasn't loaded, it was a practical question. I said, so in sociology today, what are the criteria for a healthy society? So he said, a healthy society is a society defined by these following, he said. Life expectancy, standard of living, health, people's state of health, per capita, how much money they make, and a few other such and social services. Based on that, I asked him, he said, yes, based on that, we live in the best possible social-wise, the best possible times. So then he asked me, so what does the Torah say? What would you define as a healthy society? I said, one thing, the welfare of our families and our children. And I remember he began to laugh, and he said, well, based on that, we're probably the worst society. The contrast was very interesting. He was defining social status, social progress as defined by physical material measures, which makes sense. And I was defining it by personal, spiritual, and the psychological measure. Very, very different. And it's important we understand the disparity between the two. Because the disparity is exactly why we can be having technologies that are making things speed up, and we are slowing down internally. Precisely because we have all these gadgets to rely on as crutches, it does not compel us to have to grow. Contrary, we could have success, prosperity, comforts without doing anything. So what motivates a person to grow? And we're now in a vicious cycle. And I just want to make it clear here, I'm not from the fire and brimstone anti-technology type, even though it may sound like that a bit. But we're now in a vicious cycle where this is part of our society. What are we supposed to do? Like ban mobile phones from our homes? Don't visit the internet? As I mentioned, these are gifts. It is advancement. But I'll tell you what it forces us to do. And this is the good news. If we really look at it closely, all these advancements compel us and behoove us to dig far deeper and create a far better moral society than ever before. You see, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, they had no option because they didn't have these technologies. They didn't have all this ease. So people were forced to work all day. They were forced to be in those type of challenging situations. And therefore, it was obvious that without so much free time and leisure, there was less destructive behavior. Today, precisely because we have all these advancements and it's freeing our time, it forces us that we must learn to use our time in a quality way. It's more challenging, but today it's not an option. Because today you can lose your soul very easily. Very, very easily. I remember, I'll never forget, it's just one example of millions probably. A woman that came to the class, she was from Boston, and she confided in me that her brother was a brilliant genius, a real geek, lives in Boston, he's 45 years old, not married, married to his technology, to his gadgets, to his programming. She asked me if I'd meet with him, maybe I can motivate him, because he's really a good guy. He's languishing away, destroying his life basically, hiding behind all this stuff. And so I met with him. Yeah, very smart guy, cerebral, a real brain, but emotionally very, we'll call it underdeveloped. Not underdeveloped, God forbid, in any retarded way. It just never really allowed his emotions to grow. And yes, he hides behind his mind, hides behind his cerebral behavior and attitudes, and so he took me to his apartment, and he wanted to show me his gadgets, his innovations. And he says he's hooked into, with dishes and networks, that he can access over 4,000 cable stations. Not only in the United States, but all over the world. And he shows me all these screens. And he tells me with pride that in a matter of 5 hours, he can go through all the stations. I said, and what happens then? He says, you know what that means? I have access to everything. And he shows me Arabic countries and Asian countries with subtitles. Like imagine having, just to go, if you're bored and you can't find a movie you like, you have 4,000 options. Pretty nice, right? Definitely keep you busy. Even if you don't end up watching anything, you just happen to see so many options. It's like going to a restaurant where the menu is like 300 pages. That can fill up a lot of time, just going through it. And then, of course, it just creates more confusion because you don't know how to choose because they all look good, And I literally wanted to cry. Here's a man so proud of it. And to me, for some reason, I remember it was a moment that captured, in a way, like our generation. Now, obviously, most people don't have 4,000 cable stations. But some people have it. It's football, soap operas, things, we record. What do they call it today when you record something when you don't even have to watch it on time? You just record it without the ads. What do they call it? Whatever it is. I'm glad you don't know. That's good. Everybody does it. So we all have the ease, the access today. The Olympics is coming, right? People are looking for it. They're going to have 2-3 weeks of sports. And I'm not taking away from the excellence, and you see the athleticism and the elegance and how people can excel at whatever it is that the gift and sport or event that they mastered. There's beauty in that all. But what does it really do? It takes you away. Start living vicariously through other characters, through these images, through these storylines, and so on. Now, there's nothing wrong if you have your own life. But if you're replacing your life with these lives, what does it do? So I'm not going to suggest again that this itself is the worst possible thing, but it's a slow erosion of the value of your personal life. Because all this entertainment is taking you away from focusing on what you need to focus on and growing. So in our time when we have all this free time and all these gifts, it behooves us more than ever to understand what our soul is about. And I see this from my work, Meaningful Life Center. Meaningful life. Everyone wants to have a meaningful life. There's no person on earth to say, I don't want to have a meaningful life. At the same time, most people always have this frustration. They say, so how do I do it? They tell me, you talk about a personal mission statement. Okay. But how do I find my mission? That's always the question. I'm so busy, I'm so overwhelmed. So you could see in people's hearts and souls and their eyes, you could see a real desperate need for something of transcendent nature, something meaningful like that. But at the same time, the deep frustration and sadness of not being able to access it. And it's not an easy thing to answer. Because to tell somebody, you know what, you have to overhaul your entire life. If you really want it, you have to pause. You have to put everything on hold. I'm not talking quit your job, but you have to put on hold everything that you consider so valuable and realize it's optional to be able to focus on what is the purpose of your being here on this earth. Why are you here? So if a person says, I can't talk about that, I saw a cartoon recently. A guy comes to a guru and he has a briefcase and he says, can you tell me the meaning of life? But I need it in 20 minutes because I have an important meeting. You get the idea. If the search for a purpose, why you're here, and someone says, I can't really deal with that now because I have to watch a game tonight, I don't have to explain to you what the problem with that is. Because there's no way you're going to get meaningful results if you're not ready to put meaningful investment in it. So conceptually and theoretically, we all want it. Absolutely. I have no doubt in the sincerity of people's search. But practically, we're not really ready for it because we're so addicted and to our ongoing routines and lives. So I'm not going to suggest, even though I'm tempted to do so. I often tell couples who share with me the difficulties they have in their own marriages, and I always say to them one thing. What do you do when you come home after work? Both of you are working, you come home at night. So after the not such a big joke, sometimes it's serious, well, then we start fighting because now we're with each other. All day we were busy at work, so we didn't have to fight. We didn't have time to fight with each other. Okay, fine. Is there ever a time that you can do something together that's not to fight? Yeah, we go out to dinner with friends. We go to a show. And you see right there what's being painted the picture, that one-on-one, without some crutch, without some other extracurricular activity, they can't really sit with each other without getting into some, either just everyone in their own corner, or they're going to get into some quarrel. Okay. Now, we're not getting now into the sexual and intimate relationship that people have, and they often compartmentalize. People will say, you know what, our intimacy is good, but it doesn't spill over into the rest of our lives. Sometimes you don't even have that too. But let's even say that's in place. Okay, so you come to the bedroom, you're going to sleep, fine. So if you have some intimacy, that moment is a moment where we escape into that place. As I said, let's assume that's fine. I said, but okay, what else? When you fall asleep, what happens usually? Well, the television is on. Or I have my mobile, she has her newspaper, crossword puzzle, whatever it may be. And what about if you move the television out of the room and no crossword puzzles and you just have a conversation? And it's not about sex or intimacy, it's about just speaking to each other nicely. I've said this to a number of people, I almost feel that they freeze. Like they're so awkward. They can't do that. They're afraid. So I say, but that's called a normal. And then you see right there that people don't even pursue that any longer. And I say to myself, why not? And the answer is because the other crutches that people have developed in their lives have become the go-to place when you need nurturing. So what it comes down to is back to the basics of simply having that type of communication or relationship. So what do we do with the technologies? As I said, I'm tempted to say, shut it off. We Jews have a thing called Shabbos. On Shabbos, try to shut it off. It may be good for you, not just your relationship with your spouse and family and children, but also with you and yourself, so you could spend some time with your own soul. But it's obvious impossible to expect people to just shut down their whole technology. It's almost impossible. And I wouldn't suggest that because we are dependent on it and we have become addicted, so it's not wise to just try to force people to just move out of modern culture. It's part of modern society. It's like telling people not to use a telephone, not to use Now, if a person can find that type of ability, discipline to live a monastic lifestyle, that's an exception, which I'm not going to address here. But how do you do it with the regular routines that we have? So I'm going to make a few suggestions here, practical suggestions, after laying out all the different pieces of the whole structure. And here's a few suggestions. First of all, you must have some time out, whether it's Shabbat, Shabbos, whether it's evenings, whether it's mornings. It's just like if your children coming home from school, you're going to give, if you're a healthy parent, you should give them time that does not have your mobile phone there. You're talking to your children now. Find out their day. You're putting them to sleep. Speak to them without distraction. That could be expected from everyone, and everyone can designate some time for that. That's number one. It's a must, not an option. It's a must, because it also shows that it's important to you. I can't tell you how many people told me that when they were children, the most important thing to my father, was who won the football game. I said, what about you? Did he love you? I think he loved me, but I don't know if he loved me as much as he loved this football. Now, I have no doubt the father was sitting there, he'd say he loved his child much more than football. But it wasn't apparent. Because where did he jump and scream, and where did he spend his hours? And where was he most excited was those few 3 hours during the game. So yes, in his heart, he may have loved his child more than the game. And obviously, if God forbid the child was in danger, he probably would leave the game, I hope, and go help his child. But if everything was going so-called, quote-unquote, all right, these things leave impression. Where you spend your time, where you invest your time and energy, there's no two ways about it. It doesn't matter what you say, it's what you do. So we must designate quality time for the people we consider quality in our lives. And that could be a spouse, it could be a child, it could be a friend in need, or a friend just in general, or it could be dedicating time to studying, to coming to a class, like you are doing right now, to doing something that is not just about you. This leads me to the second thing. Do something that serves someone else. Well, not the second thing yet. Let me qualify. I was saying, besides the time, but time also for yourself, nurturing your soul, prayer, study, charity, volunteer work, etc. Number two is not serving yourself. At the end of the day, technology is a great tool, but most of it is very self-absorbed. It's you. Facebook. What's Facebook? My face. My life. I'm broadcasting my life. I'm reporting. To do something not for yourself, to do something for someone else. And here is where you can turn technology around and use it for the purpose for which God created it. Use it as a tool to help other people. Everyone sees technology as a tool to help yourself. I can get information, I can get tickets, I can buy something, I can learn something, I can share my misery, my bad mood, my good mood. What about giving? Technology is an excellent tool. You can email you can build your own little list of friends. You find a meaningful thought, a nice, kind word, a nice picture, something in nature, and you share it. Now, I'm sure some of you do that already, but make it a mitzvah. Do it regularly. Because then that same technology that can be so soulless can become completely soulful. Because then the technology is an instrument for sharing, for kindness. Right here you saw, as we set up, it takes a half hour here almost, 20 minutes every time, set up here. We have a Facebook live feed here, a YouTube live feed here, all these machines. Even though it's work and so on, I'm proud to say that I feel this as a use of technology for good purposes. And I'm not saying this to promote or to toot my own horn. Why? Because it's not about it's not about selling something. It's not some infomercial. It's not about broadcasting, your face because you like to be seen. I'm trying to share words that I was taught that can help people. So technology is a tremendous tool where you can literally reach millions and millions of people with good messages. I hope my message is a good message, but that's the idea. Most people, you look at technology, if they set up a laptop, it's for them to work on, make business, entertain themselves, post something, find out something. Again, that's not necessarily an evil, but it's about self. So use technology and dedicate time to do something for others. It's very easy to do today. Every one of us gets in our inbox from time to time a nice thought. If not, find one. Make it a point that every day doesn't cost you anything. The press of a button, send to a little list of your friends a nice, warm thought. That's in a collective way. And individually, someone who's hurting, someone who's lonely, someone who had a loss, you send them a nice note. Again, something many of us do anyway, but with technology it makes it so much easier. The point is to orient yourself into a new type of approach to life. And today we must do this because it's sink or swim. Because we're living in a world that inundates us. Statistics showing that in the Western world, by the time you're age 20, you have seen or heard 1 million advertisements of someone selling you something. You hear that? 1 million. And don't think it doesn't have an effect on us. It has an effect on us in many deep ways, subliminal ways, because at the end of the day, there's no way you bought 1 million products. So it ends up feeling that you always feel like left out. You see this ad, travel here, smoke this, go here, look like this, dress this way, watch this, and you say to yourself, look, I feel deprivation because look at all that's out there and how much I don't have. That's what it ends up doing. So we are not in a neutral world. We're in a world that people are constantly inundating us with demands, with sales pitches, with marketing. So we are under attack. Our psyche is under assault. And how do you fight an assault? The best defense is offense. When you are influencing, when you're inspiring someone else, you're much less prone to be influenced because you are exuding. When you're exuding, you absorb less. And that's point number 2, or you could say even 3, which is to become an influencer instead of being influenced. I gave a talk recently of developing this acronym called SOLID, to be a solid person. That a person that's a solid person is someone that has those 5 things, the 5 letters of solid. S, that instead of seeing, S is SOLID, right? So S is, let me think. No. Yeah. Solutions instead of problems. The O is opportunities instead of challenges. The L is leadership, and the I is initiative, and the D is solid D. Just trying to remember. It's still under development. What is the D? No. Destination. To see the destination in mind. You'll look at leaders and you'll see they stand out. Real leaders stand out with these 5 things. Anything that seems like a problem, everyone else says, I can't do it, they'll see it as some way to find a solution. Think of a commander-in-chief. So the battles are going well, but then there's a setback. So someone's not a commander-in-chief will say, you know what, we can't do it, let's retreat. A commander-in-chief will regroup, revisit, and say, okay, we can't go this way, we'll go that way. We can't do it this way, we'll go do it a different way. They look for solutions. Second thing is when there's impediment or difficulty, they see it as an opportunity. Every difficulty can be an opportunity. Thirdly, they show leadership. They're not following. They pioneer things. They're a leader. They don't wait and hear what everybody else says and then they say what they say. They lead. They take the first step. Number 4 is initiative. Even though it sounds like leadership, but it's different. Initiative means that you're proactive, not reactive. And finally, you always look for the goal. You have a goal in mind. What's your big goal? You're not distracted by the moments. You're not distracted by the ups and downs. You look for the goal. What's the destination? And you find the best way to reach there. I say that because in a world like when the sea is calm and you don't have many forces attacking or assaulting our psyche, You could say, okay, you know what, I can drift. But when it's not that case, when we're inundated, and we are inundated, wherever you go outside, lights are shining at you, ads are coming at you, window panes, what do they call it? Not window panes. Displays in the front windows of stores. What do they call that? I need your help here a little. Okay. Then, of course, the internet, television, wherever you go, newspaper, advertising, marketing, whatever it is. You go into a supermarket, they say the colors, the smell, the lighting. It's all some way manipulating you. So we're not in a neutral zone. We're not in a place where, you know what, you can just drift. You don't. It's like climbing a mountain. You're either going up or you're going down. So that's why more than ever we need these 5 things. We need that solidity and direction that drives, that we driving our lives, not someone else is driving your life. And technology amplifies it 1,000-fold, if not more. If you don't have those anchors and you don't have that direction, you just get lost in the sea of what's called the information revolution. You can sit on Google all day and search like the guy with 4,000 cable channels is nothing. You can sit all day and be inundated and be completely overwhelmed by information coming from every direction. That's why it's critical for us to get hold of our lives, get control of our lives. And get control of your life means understanding, why am I here? What can I uniquely contribute? And how can I be giving instead of just taking? When you get in that mode, you become immunized, and you ultimately can get control. So, at the end of the day, the final analysis, technology is a great gift, great tool. The mobility it creates, however, should never confuse us, never deceive us into thinking that we have it all worked out. It should be a lesson to teach us, okay, how much am I internally moving? Am I becoming a more loving person? And you do that by acting that way, by behaving in a more loving way, and using technology as a tool instead of, it's like the hammer shouldn't be telling the hand what to do, the hand should be telling the hammer what to do. So when you wake up in the morning and you get on your mobile phone, or you go to your laptop or desktop or whatever it is, or tablet, what happens? Whatever is beaming at you is going to control your life. Oh, here's emails, okay, I have to answer them. Here's these ads, I have to respond. I have to ignore, I have to send it to spam. You know, you're responding, you're reacting. Instead of the first thing maybe should be when you finally get to your mobile, should be, what email am I sending out today to help somebody? It's a very different approach. Psychologically, one is you're reacting. And I catch myself all the time. I see a bunch of emails in my inbox. Oh boy, I got to answer all these emails. Then I stop myself, 1 second. It's just true, out of courtesy I may have to answer. But is that my life is going to be driven by having to answer to everybody that emails me? No, I'll find the time to do so. But you take control is that this technology is a gift in my life, to use it to transmit something, not just to respond to something. So the small things like this make a major difference. And that's what we have to learn to do, is to look at our lives, step back, create the space as I mentioned, and then see the tools we have. What tools do we have to fulfill the mission that comes from in here? In here. The soul, the heart, the inside of you, which is what makes you tick. That's what we have to reclaim. And that is very easily lost in our times, very easily lost. And that's why I mentioned Shabbos is an unbelievable oasis in time. You're forced to go there. Now, some people tell me I can't stand Shabbos because it's a day I do nothing. I can't wait to get back on my phone or my computer. And I say the exact opposite. You should say, I can't wait to get off my computer and go back into yourself. But if you're not comfortable with your own self, if you've not done any self-cultivation of your soul and spirit, obviously you're not accustomed to it. So that's what we have to shift and change. Start feeding your soul. You know, in the drug culture they call it feeding your head. You know, I'm talking about feeding your soul, not to be confused. It means feeding your soul means nurturing your soul, nurturing the purpose for which you were created, the ability to give of yourself. Now this, of course, requires understanding yourself a little better and knowing what do you have to give. And all of us have something beautiful to give, because we all have a unique song, we all have a unique flower, we all have a unique contribution to make. So if I were to ask you, what is it unique inside of you that you feel you can give? No? You don't have to answer right now. Answer that question to yourself. It's a good exercise to begin with. And I don't mean a type of self-adulation or anything arrogant. I mean just an appreciation. What can you give? Some people are very sensitive, and they're able to help people understand things better, help the human condition, with empathy, and so on. Some people are very analytical and cerebral. They could help dissect the problem, break it down. Some people are very creative, musical. Everybody has something that is unique. The second question I would ask you is, what are you passionate about? And here, look for not a passion. I'm passionate about making a lot of money. I'm passionate about watching my next soap opera. Obviously, that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about passionate from within here. Something in your heart and soul. I remember there was a couple, they were dating, what's called perpetual dating. You know, I don't know if New York is the only city in the world where there's a thing called a epidemic of single life, but it's definitely large here. So they were dating and dating and dating and dating. And the woman was ready to get married, and the man still was holding his options open. He's not ready. So they came over to me after one of the classes, and she said to me that with the permission of her boyfriend who's dating, can he come speak to me because she wants to tie the knot, and he's still procrastinating. And he was open to talking and so on. So I met with him. We met in Brooklyn at, remember, it was in Grand Army Plaza, the big public library, the major Brooklyn Public Library, upstairs there. And we were talking, and I went through all the usual suspects. Maybe he went through, his parents had a bad marriage. Maybe he had bad relationship experiences in the past. You know, the usual suspects, why somebody would have commitment issues. You know, this commitment issues thing. Anyway, nothing panned out. All the usual suspects we had to uncheck them. And we're sitting, and I really didn't know what to say more than that. I said, you're dating for several years now. Clearly love each other. Why don't you just commit? I don't know. I don't feel the compelling need to do so, whatever. He was a very smart guy. He was a computer mind type, computer science he was into. And then, I don't know, suddenly I had an instinct. I turned to him and I said, you know something? I don't think it's about the woman you're dating. I don't think it's about marriage, frankly. I think it's about you. I don't think you're committed to anything in life. I don't know, I just blurted that out. Not in an insulting way. I just said, is there anything that you really committed to that no matter what happens, you would do it? You're ready to die for it. I don't mean physically, but I mean go all the way. He sits back and he said, no, not really. It's true. I don't have anything that I can really say that. And then, of course, he challenged me in return. He says, what about you? What do you have? What's your, what absolutely committed to? And we were having this very open, candid, no holds barred. There was very comfortable with each other. So I don't know, for some reason, sometimes you ask the question, you answer the same answer every time. This time, I had some type of flashback to my childhood. And I shared with him to try to answer his question. I said, you know something? When I was a little kid, I remember, and it was just that moment that I had that flashback, because I guess he asked it with it was like somewhat disarming, spontaneous way. So I said, my school was like, I was living on Sullivan Place and Rogers and Nostrand, and my school was at Bedford and Dean and Bedford and Dean. It's like a good half-hour walk, probably 25-minute walk. But and we sometimes go by bus, but at times I would walk. And I said, the times I really liked to walk when it was raining. Even though, most people, that's the time they don't walk. I said, but that wasn't because of the rain. I had this quirk that was my little secret that I didn't share with anyone. And it goes back 6, 7, 8 years old. I don't even remember exact age. I must have been 1969. Yeah. I must have been 9, 10 years old or something, a little younger. And I had this, as I said, this quirk. I would walk, as it rained, I would walk at the edge of the sidewalk by the curb, and I would clean the path of the water running down the curb into the sewers. So they had twigs, leaves, dust, dirt. And I just open up some paths and let the water run a little smoother. Like sometimes you see water blocked and you just have that feeling you want to make it rush, like maybe turn it to Niagara Falls or something, And I said, that till this day, I still have that passion. It's like a deep passion in my heart and soul, where I have this like, I feel a deep need and desire, wherever I see blocks, to help people open up those blocks. So psychologically, I do the same thing. I don't do it with the rain anymore, but when I speak to people, I have this inclination and strong desire to try to unblock things that block people from seeing the path of what's healthy for them or what's right. And that's what I do. That's my passion. I'm ready to die for that. And I remember this guy started crying. He said, that's so moving. I wish I had something like that. That's what came to me. I just share it with you because I'm talking about finding something inside of you that you feel you can contribute. Everybody has something. And until you don't ask the question, you're not going to find an answer. Shailas chacham chetzi tshuva. The question of a wise person is have the answer. So it's critical to answer the two questions that I asked before. What's your unique contribution and what's your passion? Now, there's more questions than that. I'm actually working with developing a Discover Your Personal Mission webinar, where I'll be an hour webinar with a ebook and exercises. But these are two questions that I think can begin the first step of getting control of your life. That you and your inside soul drives your life instead of life driving you. And in the world of technology, it's more important than ever, because technology, as I said, magnifies and amplifies everything. And it's far greater and more overwhelming than ever before. So it's important to start thinking from the inside out. So those are the two questions. Try to answer those questions, and I guarantee you, you'll be on your way of moving from the couch potato to somebody that's making moves. Moving from being something that is someone that's just letting the world around you speed so quickly and getting it all on your mobile, and your inner soul becoming mobile. So it's time that instead of having millions of frequent flyer miles on your account, and maybe not even a mile that you can say psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually that you've moved, maybe the other way around. Having millions of miles that your soul travels. You can also have frequent flyer miles, that's not a contradiction, but not one replacing the other. And to be able to say that today I've moved. My soul has moved from one place to the next. There's nothing more powerful than that. That's real movement. So you can have all the mobile gadgets and not move, and be lethargic, paralyzed, numbed, even dead in a certain way. And everything around you is moving, and you think everything's moving. Like in the theory of relativity, you can be sitting on a merry-go-round and everything is moving but you. And you think everything is turning, spinning. Or the other way around, that the movement comes from within. Your heart is beating, your breath is exhaling and inhaling, and your soul is beating. You feel excited. You jump out of bed. You feel like you have something to give, to contribute, to love, to share. That's where you become the mobile force, and the tools around you, the instruments, help you achieve that. And instead of being deceived into thinking, because we have all these tools that are so quick moving, that's why we're quick moving. No, we're not. Just because the train is moving quickly doesn't mean you are. You want to be moving quickly, and the train is just a tool to get to a place in a faster way. So never convince yourself that our machines and tools replace our need to have that type of movement. So God bless everyone here with that ability to discover, as I said, the two things. Something you uniquely can contribute, and secondly, your passion. You bring those two things together, and you're on your way to a more meaningful life. So thank you very much. This has been both in YouTube, and I welcome the Facebook Live. Please share, please comment, and hopefully we can use all these technologies, and in the words of Isaiah, to fill the world with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. Thank you. Until next Wednesday, I look forward to speak further with you. I just want to add one thing, that this week's Torah chapter, which is one of the reasons I spoke about this, is about mobility. Maseh, the last chapter in the book of Numbers, is about journeys and travels, and hence the real subtext of all that we've spoken about. So thank you again. We'll be here next Wednesday. Please, if you haven't left your email address, do so. and stay in touch with us and see how we can help you and you can help us become more mobile in the real sense of the word. Have a good week. Thank you. Bye. Okay. Yes. Shutting down the technologies.
Question. How do you decide how much Judaism, Torah, Talmud to bring into a discussion? Because you never mentioned, and you talked about this sometimes. You had the speech where you talked about some atomic particles, and a guy came up to you and said, "Are you talking about God?" So how do you decide how much Judaism to inflect into a discussion? Because you didn't mention, you said it, but you didn't say it that false technology can be a false deity.